The shrill alarm shattered the quiet stillness of Project Dawn's main facility, echoing through the metallic corridors like the cry of a wounded animal. Captain Dorian Vakir's boots slammed against the cold floor, each step reverberating in his chest as he sprinted towards the control room. Sweat slicked his forehead, and his mind raced. What the hell was happening? "Talk to me, Emma. What the hell is going on?" he barked, slamming the door open. Inside, the control room was bathed in the eerie glow of laser plasma displays. Dr. Merrick Tanis, the chief engineer, was hunched over one of the consoles, furiously typing away. His face was flushed, his eyes wide with panic. At the far side of the room, Dr. Jarek Voss, the lead quantum physicist, scanned a wall of data streaming across multiple heads-up displays. "It's bad, Vakir. It's real bad." Emma Reed's voice cut through the air like a blade. She stood at the center, her hands trembling slightly as she pointed to a series of readings on the display. Her tired eyes flicked between the monitor and Vakir, her usual calm demeanor giving way to uncertainty. "The quantum core. It's breaking apart. It's eating itself." Vakir's heart skipped a beat. The FTL drive, humanity's first attempt to break free from the solar system, was their last, best hope. To see it in such a state was beyond terrifying. "Explain," Vakir growled, leaning over her shoulder. "I don't know how to explain it, but we're losing it, Captain," Emma said, her voice cracking. She pulled her glasses off and rubbed her eyes. "The molecular structure of the core it's disintegrating, like someone's taking a knife to the fabric of it. We triple-checked everything, Dorian. This shouldn't be possible." Vakir clenched his fists. His mind screamed for answers, but all he could do was watch helplessly as the complex data swirled on the display, mocking his lack of understanding. He leaned in closer, eyes scanning the encrypted data, his breath shallow. Dr. Voss stepped forward, his voice sharp with urgency. "I've never seen anything like this. It's too precise, too deliberate. Someone's been tampering with the core at a molecular level." "Someone?" Vakir muttered, his brow furrowing. He looked over at Marek, who was now pulling up blueprints of the quantum core, shaking his head. "You're saying this wasn't just a freak malfunction? This is sabotage?" "Not just sabotage," Voss replied, tapping his finger on the display. "This is an alien intervention." The word hit Vakir like a punch to the gut. He glanced at the other members of his team, his jaw tightening as he fought to keep his composure. "Aliens. Are you telling me that someone from outside of Earth is attacking our project?" Vakir's voice was thick with disbelief. Voss nodded grimly. "Look at this." He tapped a series of complex symbols that appeared on the heads-up display. "Nanobots. These aren't human. I've cross-referenced the chemical composition. It's not from any Earth-based technology. Whoever did this is way ahead of us, and they're playing a game we didn't even know we were a part of." A chill washed over Vakir. For a moment, the room felt smaller, the air heavier. The human race had always been the underdog, but this was a different level. "How long have they been watching us?" he asked, more to himself than anyone else. Marek's voice cut through the tension. "Longer than we thought. These nanobots have been in the core since day one. They've just been waiting for the right moment." His hands slammed the console, frustration building. "We've been outplayed." Vakir stared at the display, the implications slowly sinking in. His mind raced through 1,000 scenarios. Who were these aliens? What did they want? And why sabotage humanity's greatest achievement? "Who the hell are they?" Vakir muttered, his fists clenched. "China? Russia? No, this is something else, something bigger." Voss was already pulling up more data, his face pale under the harsh lights of the lab. "This isn't human technology. These nanobots. This is advanced beyond anything we've even dreamed of. Whoever they are, they're at least 50 years ahead of us." 50 years? The realization hit like a freight train. They weren't dealing with a rival nation or a rogue group. This was something extraterrestrial. Someone had targeted them. Someone who didn't want humanity to succeed. Emma turned to Vakir, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. "This could mean we're not alone." Vakir's voice was low, almost a growl. No shit, Emma. But the real question is, why? Why stop us now? We're just starting to make a dent in the universe. Why put a stop to us before we even leave the damn solar system? A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the constant buzz of activity in the lab. Everyone in the room seemed to be processing the same thought. Humanity had been targeted by a force greater than themselves, and they had no idea how to fight back. Get everyone out of the testing chamber, Vakir commanded, his voice cutting through the thick air. We're pulling the plug. Full evacuation. Now. He didn't wait for a response, turning on his heel and striding toward the observation window. The sprawling testing facility was visible below, scientists and engineers moving swiftly, evacuating with precision. The giant quantum FTL drive, once humanity's shining beacon of hope, now looked like a ghost. Its sleek, towering form gleamed in the harsh light, a monument to failure. Dorian, look at this. Emma's voice was strained, drawing his attention back to the control room. She pointed to the magnified image of the decaying quantum core on the display. The holes in the core structure were now forming a pattern, a distinct, almost deliberate design. It's not random, Vakir said, his throat tightening. This isn't a malfunction. This is sabotage. He ran his hand over his face, his heart pounding. The pieces were falling into place, each one more unsettling than the last. Get me the best intel we've got on alien technologies. Now I want everything, every scrap of data. Emma's fingers flew across the keyboard. I'll start pulling whatever we can from our systems, but I don't know how much we can do with what we've got. We'll make do, Vakir said, his voice sharp, cutting through the chaos. We always do. He turned back to the window, staring out into the New Mexico desert, the fading sunlight painting the world in amber. For the first time in his career, he didn't feel ready for what was coming. But he had no choice but to face it. And he would. Humanity wasn't going down without a fight. They never did. The room was silent, except for the clatter of fingers against keypads and the sharp beeping of laser plasma displays that filled the air with a low, urgent hum. The sterile scent of the control room mixed with the sharp tang of burnt ozone from the disintegrating FTL core. Captain Dorian Vakir stood by the observation window, eyes narrowed as he watched the team work. The facility, once buzzing with excitement, now felt suffocating, weighed down by the knowledge of what had been lost and what lay ahead. His mind was still racing. Aliens. They'd attacked them. This wasn't just a setback. It was a message. Behind him, Emma Reed's voice broke through the tension. The alien tech, whatever it is, it's unlike anything we've seen. It's not just advanced. It's... She hesitated, looking for the words that could properly encapsulate her awe and unease. It's alien, Dorian. Completely foreign. Vakir glanced at her but didn't speak, his eyes flicking to the monitor she had just activated. The laser plasma screen glowed a cool blue, showing schematics of the quantum core, now just a pile of shattered debris. The nanobots had done their work with cold efficiency. But what really caught his eye was the data that followed. Symbols and equations he didn't recognize. A set of patterns that didn't belong to any human language or technology. Let me guess, Vakir said, his voice low, almost to himself. We're not just dealing with technology. We're dealing with a message. Emma didn't look up. A warning, maybe, she frowned, tapping at the display. Or worse, an invitation, a way of saying, we're watching and you're not ready. The thought sent a cold shiver down his spine, but he forced it down. He couldn't afford to dwell on it. Not now. Not when they still had a chance to turn this around. Marek Tanis stood across the room, his face pinched with frustration. It's not just sabotage, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. It's... He shook his head, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. The design, the materials. It's almost like they wanted to give us a chance to rebuild. Vakir turned toward Marek, irritation flickering beneath his calm. You think this was deliberate? They wanted us to figure it out? Marek didn't meet his eyes, instead glancing at the wall of data that was flashing in front of him. I don't know, Captain, but it's not random. Whoever built this doesn't make mistakes. Not like this. The idea gnawed at Vakir. If the Silvath collective had intentionally left them a trail to follow, what did that mean? Was it a trap? Or a challenge? He ran his hand through his hair, eyes burning with the weight of the decision ahead. We need to reverse engineer whatever they left us, Vakir said, turning back toward Emma. I want every piece of alien tech we've got. Data, materials, everything. It's time to turn the tables. Emma's gaze flickered over to the monitor. It's not going to be easy. If we're going to rebuild, we need to get into their systems. Figure out how they encrypted their data, how their nanobots work, why they're so self-sufficient. We'll need specialists. We have specialists, Vakir replied, his voice steady. He turned to Dr. Jarek Voss, who had been watching from the corner of the room, his hands folded behind his back, his face a mask of calculation. We've got about 30 hours before the Silvath realize the damage we've done, Vakir continued. That's our window. We need to be ready for what comes next. Voss nodded slowly, his sharp eyes never leaving the display. I can start pulling data from their systems. There are some fragments we can work with. I'll need a few hours to decipher the algorithms, but... He paused, his fingers hovering over the console. I'll need direct access to their quantum communications to get us the full picture. Then we get you that access, Vakir said, his voice firm. Marek, you're with Voss. I want the tech analyzed, reverse-engineered, and made usable. No errors. We're not wasting time. Marek nodded curtly, his face grim. You got it, but don't expect it to be easy. This alien tech is built like a fortress. If we're going to breach it, we need to understand their architecture first. Vakir turned back to the control room, eyes scanning the team. There was no room for hesitation. They had to move fast. The Silvath were out there, watching, waiting for the humans to stumble. He wasn't going to let them win. Vashor, Caden, prepare the strike teams, Vakir ordered. We've got to be ready. The moment we crack their systems, we strike. The two men nodded, their faces hardening as they prepared for the mission ahead. They didn't need to speak to understand the gravity of the situation. They were in it now, no turning back. As the team scattered, Vakir remained where he stood, staring out the window into the desert beyond. The horizon stretched out endlessly, the bright orange sky darkening into night. The quiet of the moment felt surreal against the chaos brewing inside the facility. The world outside seemed unchanged, unaffected by the storm that was gathering inside. But the storm was coming. He could feel it in his bones. Emma, Vakir said, his voice quieter now, do you think we can actually do it? Can we take their tech, turn it into something more? Something that will give us a fighting chance? Emma's fingers hovered over the control panel, her eyes never leaving the screen. She took a deep breath before responding, her tone more thoughtful than usual. I don't know, Dorian, but we're going to try. And when we do, the Silvath won't know what hit them. Vakir's lips curled into a grim smile. Then let's get started. As the team dove headfirst into the chaos of reverse engineering and battlefield preparation, the weight of the task ahead hung over them like a dark cloud. The next few days would be critical. Humanity had to take this opportunity, because if they didn't, they would be left to watch from the sidelines as the rest of the galaxy moved on without them. That wasn't going to happen, not while he was in charge. The air in the underground facility crackled with tension as the clock continued its relentless countdown. The team had just a few hours left to prepare before the moment of truth. Dorian Vakir stood at the far side of the command room, staring at the laser plasma display where the final schematics of their stealth ship flickered into place. The ship was a sleek, dark silhouette, its contours shaped by human ingenuity and alien tech, a blend of the best and the unknown. The idea of using Silvath technology to cover their tracks had been revolutionary, but now the real test was about to begin. Could they pull off the impossible? Marek, how's the engine hold-up? Vakir asked without turning around, his voice even, but with an undercurrent of something that might have been impatience. Marek Tanis didn't look up from his console, his fingers tapping rhythmically across the keys. The modifications are holding steady for now, Captain. It's still a prototype, but it's got enough power to get us to the station. The real challenge comes once we're inside. We're talking about an alien facility designed to stay hidden from anyone who doesn't belong there. Vakir clenched his jaw. We belong there. We're the ones who got the tech to make it. I wouldn't go that far, Marek muttered under his breath. But Vakir could hear the edge of uncertainty creeping into his voice. We'll find out soon enough, Vakir said, his tone firm. The doubt didn't bother him. Not yet. It would only matter if they failed. He turned his attention to the other end of the room where Vashor Rick and Caden Rice stood, preparing the strike team. The two men were a study in controlled intensity. Rick, with his hard eyes and quiet presence, had always been the kind of soldier who led from the shadows. Rice, on the other hand, was all speed and instinct, his eyes constantly darting over the controls as though anticipating the next move. This mission doesn't end until we get what we came for, Vakir said, walking up to the two men. No mistakes. Rick gave a sharp nod, his voice steady. Understood. We'll do what we need to, Captain. Rice smirked, his usual confidence playing across his face like a shadow. I've been in worse scrapes, sir. This'll be a walk in the park. Vakir's eyes flicked toward the screen as the digital map of the Silvath station zoomed into focus. Its sleek, crystalline design was an artful blend of form and function. From the data they had intercepted, it was clear the station wasn't just a research facility, it was the heart of their technological operations, a place where the Silvath had been monitoring humanity's progress in real time. They needed to get in, disable the defenses, and extract whatever data they could. We don't know what we're walking into, Vakir said, his voice lowering to a near whisper. Their security is designed to keep things quiet, but it's not invulnerable. We'll need to move fast. Vashor, you're in charge of securing the entry point. Caden, you'll follow with the secondary team. You're both briefed. Remember, no heroics. Just get in, get the data, and get out. The room fell into a quiet, tense rhythm as the final preparations were made. A series of heads-up displays blinked to life as everyone checked their equipment. The team moved with practiced efficiency. Gear was strapped into place, weapons tested, communication systems synced. Everything checks out, Rice said, his voice a shade too casual for the weight of the moment. His eyes met Vakir's, a fleeting flash of something sharp behind his calm exterior. Ready when you are. Vakir gave a curt nod and walked toward the airlock. As the doors hissed open, he glanced back at his team. The cold metal walls of the facility seemed to close in on them, but he didn't let the claustrophobia show. There would be no time for hesitation once they were inside enemy territory. Let's move, he said, the words clipped, but carrying the weight of command. The mission was underway. The stealth ship slid through the darkness, its sensors barely registering the crystalline structures of the Silvath station ahead. The walls of the station, shimmering like translucent ice, loomed in the distance, their cold glow reflecting off the hull of the ship. The deep hum of the ship's modified engines vibrated through the soles of Vakir's boots as he scanned the screens. The familiar rush of adrenaline was coursing through him, but it was tempered with an unfamiliar edge, a gnawing sense that they were being watched. As they neared the outer airlock, Rick's voice came through the comm. Approaching entry point. We're clear. No sign of movement. Vakir gripped the edge of his seat, eyes fixed on the laser plasma display that showed their trajectory. The time had come. Engage, cloaking. The hum of the engines deepened, the ship's contours folding into the invisible fabric of space. Even the faintest ripple of movement was absorbed, hidden by the alien technology they had adapted. It was a gamble. This stealth system was a prototype, and it could fail at any moment. Cloaking engaged, Rice confirmed, his fingers dancing across his panel. The ship shuddered slightly as it slipped into a near-perfect state of invisibility. Deploy the grapples, Vakir ordered. Vashor's voice came through the comm, low and controlled. Grapples set. We're locked onto the airlock. Breaching in 5, Vakir said, his gaze never leaving the screen. The seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity as the team prepared for the worst. Vakir could almost hear his pulse in his ears, a steady thrum that drowned out the quiet sounds of the ship's systems. They had one chance. One. Entry point secured, Vashor reported. The airlock doors hissed open and the team moved swiftly, sliding into the station's darkened corridors. The station was eerily silent, its vast network of hallways stretching out before them like an ancient labyrinth. The walls pulsed with an unnatural glow, faint and constant, casting shadows across the polished surfaces. The air smelled sterile, tinged with the faint scent of machinery, a sharp, clean metallic tang. There were no signs of the Silvath, but Vakir knew better than to let his guard down. "We're on their turf now," he muttered, scanning the corridor ahead. "Stay sharp." They moved in a tight formation, their boots soundless on the glass-like floor. As they turned a corner, Vakir caught the faintest flicker of motion, just a blur in the distance. His hand went to his weapon, but Vashor was already ahead of him, eyes narrowing as he signaled for the team to halt. "Stay low," Rick whispered. "We're not alone." A low thrum reverberated through the floor, and Vakir's breath caught in his throat. The Silvath had anticipated this. They were here. The game was on. "We make it out with the data," Vakir said, his voice low and even. "Anything else is secondary." They moved forward, the weight of their mission bearing down on them with every step. Every shadow now felt alive with the potential for disaster, every flicker of light, a reminder that they were no longer the hunters. They were the prey. The silence of the Silvath research station pressed in on Vakir as he crouched by the narrow hallway, listening intently. His pulse was a steady throb beneath his skin, but his focus remained razor-sharp. The mission had entered a critical phase. They had gained access to the heart of the facility, secured the data they needed, and now, the most dangerous part of the operation awaited them, getting out alive. Vakir signaled for the team to hold position. The shadows in the corridor seemed to stretch and contract, and the faint hum of the station's power system reverberated in the walls like a heartbeat. The air was unnervingly still, and the smell of machinery lingered, a dry, metallic tang that filled his nose. His mind flickered through the details of the plan, his eyes scanning the heads-up display embedded in his wrist. "Vashor," Vakir murmured, his voice barely audible. "Status on the Silvath presence?" Vashor Rick's voice came through the comm, low and controlled. "No direct contact yet, but we're not alone. Sensors are picking up activity on the lower levels. Something's moving. They've got patrols, probably looking for us." Vakir's jaw tightened. The longer they stayed, the greater the risk of detection. The station had been built to resist intrusions, and now, with their cover compromised, they were playing a dangerous game. Still, the mission had to succeed. There was no alternative. The data they had gathered on the Silvath's quantum technology was invaluable, an advantage they could not afford to squander. "Caden, check the exits," Vakir ordered. "Make sure we have a clear path out." Caden Rice's voice crackled through the comm. "On it. I've marked a secondary exit on the display, but we're going to have to move fast. If the Silvath realize we're here, they'll lock down the whole station. We'll have no way out." Vakir glanced at the map projected on his wrist display. The primary exit, where they had entered, was no longer viable. The secondary exit was their best shot, but it was deep within the station's core. The route would take them past the most heavily guarded sectors, through maintenance shafts, storage bays, and power relays. Every step was fraught with danger. "We're not pulling back yet," Vakir said, his voice steady. "We've got a job to finish. The data we've collected isn't enough. We need to disable their quantum network, take out their control systems, and lock them down." Vashor's sharp intake of breath crackled through the comm. "You want to cripple the station? That'll get their attention real quick." Vakir's eyes met Vashor's across the dim corridor. "It's a risk we have to take. If we leave this place intact, they'll be able to track us the moment we escape. We need to cut off their ability to monitor us, cut their communications. We do this, and we give ourselves a fighting chance." The plan was simple, but it wasn't without complications. The Silvath's quantum network was their lifeblood, a system so advanced that disabling it would essentially blind the entire station. But there was a catch. The quantum processors responsible for the network's operation were housed in the central control room, heavily guarded and protected by layers of encrypted defenses. "If we're going to hit their core, we need to split up," Vakir said, his mind working through the possibilities. "Vashor, Caden, you're with me. We'll head for the control room and disable the quantum processors. Emma, you and Merrick will take out the auxiliary systems and ensure we don't get locked out." Emma Reed's voice was sharp, laced with the strain of the situation. "Understood. We've got the tools to crack their security codes, but you're right. We'll need to move fast. Once we start, there's no going back." Vakir nodded, giving her a brief glance. "Merrick's team can handle the encryption. You and I will work the breach. Vashor, Caden, stay sharp. We can't afford any surprises." As they split into their respective teams, the gravity of their mission settled in. Vakir knew the risks. No plan was foolproof, and the Silvath were not known for their mercy. But this was their only chance. They had the element of surprise, and now, with the quantum processors in their sights, they had the tools to bring the station to its knees. The narrow corridors led them deeper into the station's heart, and the quiet buzz of their footfalls seemed deafening in the silence. The walls here were cold and smooth, like glass, giving the feeling that they were traveling through the innards of some giant alien organism. The displays on their wrist consoles flickered occasionally, showing the data they had stolen, but the most important information was still locked in the central processors. Vakir's focus never wavered, his grip tightening on his weapon as they approached their target. "We're getting close," Vashor whispered, his voice almost drowned out by the low hum of the station's central systems. His eyes were scanning the surroundings, alert for any movement. The tension in the air was palpable, and Vakir could feel the hairs on the back of his neck prickle. At the end of the hall, the control room doors stood in their way, massive steel barriers that would require all their strength and expertise to breach. Vakir stepped forward, his fingers tapping the comm to initiate the lockdown sequence. "Emma, Marek, prepare the overrides." "Roger that," came Emma's response, her voice calm despite the chaos. "We're ready on our end." Vakir exchanged a brief look with Vashor. This was it. They had one shot at this. He turned to Caden, his eyes narrowing. "Once we're inside, hit the mainframe and disable everything. I want a full lockdown. No access to their systems." Caden's grin was a flash of light in the dark. "I'm all over it." The door to the control room slid open with a smooth hiss, revealing the interior, rows upon rows of quantum computers, their glowing screens casting a sickly light across the room. But there was no time to admire the technology. They moved quickly, silently, their actions almost choreographed as they approached the central processors. Vakir tapped a series of commands into his console while Vashor and Caden set up the breach. The seconds dragged by like hours. Then, with a sharp click, the door to the processor's core swung open, revealing the heart of the Silvath's operations. Vakir's pulse quickened as he stepped inside, scanning the area for threats. No sooner had they crossed the threshold than a warning alarm blared. Too late to stop now. The countdown to their fate had begun. The station's alarm echoed in their ears like the sound of a death knell, a warning that their presence had been detected. Vakir's pulse quickened, but his movements remained fluid, controlled. There was no time to waste. The central processor was exposed, vulnerable, but the Silvath were already mobilizing. The room pulsed with energy, its walls now vibrating with the thrum of rapidly moving forces outside. The window for escape was closing, and the only way out was to complete the mission and leave no trace of their presence behind. "We don't have much time, Captain," Caden's voice crackled through the comms, tense but steady. "The Silvath are inbound. We'll have to move fast." Vakir's gaze flickered to the heads-up display, tracking the incoming security teams. He nodded grimly, his hand steady as he typed a series of commands into the console. The systems began to shut down, the digital lights dimming as their breach into the Silvath's quantum core completed. "Data extracted," Merrick's voice came through, cutting through the tension. "We've got everything we need, but they're already mobilizing. We can't stay here." "We're not staying," Vakir said, his voice low, but there was an unshakable confidence in his tone. Vashor, Caden, get to the secondary exit. We'll cover you from here. Vashor gave a sharp nod, his face impassive, but Vakir saw the determination in his eyes. They had come this far. They wouldn't fail now. Emma, Marek, Vakir continued, his fingers pressing the last commands into the console. Lock down the station systems. Keep them from reaching their full capacity. There was no hesitation. The team moved as one, no words needed. They knew their roles and their purpose. Vakir's eyes remained fixed on the data streaming across the laser plasma displays. The energy readings flickered, shifting rapidly. The station systems were fighting back, attempting to override their shutdown, but they were too late. They had already seized the advantage. Outside, the sound of footsteps grew louder, closer, heavy boots pounding the floor. Vakir turned, his pulse steady, his hands ready. The Silvath were coming, but so were they. He glanced at Vashor, who had already moved into position near the door. Caden stood next to him, eyes sharp, muscles coiled, waiting for the command. Move, Vakir ordered, his voice sharp as steel. The team surged forward, and the battle began. The corridor was narrow, the light dimming as they rushed past, their boots ringing against the smooth floor. The air smelled stale, heavy, almost suffocating, and every step felt weighted with the gravity of the moment. They had their prize, but the path to freedom wasn't easy. The Silvath were everywhere now, flooding into the station's core with a fury that mirrored their frustration. Vakir could feel the tension in the air. The storm that had been brewing since the beginning of their infiltration was now on the verge of breaking. As they neared the exit, Vakir's wrist display pinged, alerting him to a new set of incoming coordinates. It was a direct feed to the central quantum network. They had initiated the process, but the Silvath had adapted quickly. They were rerouting the station's security to ensure their escape was impossible. "Shut it down now," Vakir barked, his eyes flicking toward Emma and Marek. They were already on it, pulling every available resource to close the breach. The seconds ticked by, but they were losing ground. "Almost there." Marek's voice was calm, but the tension was evident in the slight tremor of his words. "I'm bypassing their final encryption, but it's tight. I need more time." Vakir cursed under his breath. "How much time?" "Seconds," Marek replied. "We'll either take it or we'll—" The roar of heavy footsteps drowned out the rest of Marek's sentence. They were here. Vakir's eyes scanned the corridor, his mind calculating their options. He didn't have to think long. He turned to Vashor. "Go. Now." Vashor and Caden shot through the doorway without a moment's hesitation, their weapons raised, their movements fluid and efficient. The door slammed shut behind them, and the station seemed to fall into a tense, suffocating quiet. "They're not going to give up," Emma said, her voice tight, her hands working furiously at the console. "We need to finish this now." Vakir stood his ground, his eyes narrowing as he took in the display. The data, the stolen secrets, they were worth everything, but they would never get out alive unless they cut the heart out of the Silvath first. "We will finish this," Vakir said, his tone low but unwavering. "I'll make sure of it." The sound of an incoming force moving fast brought the air to a halt, but Vakir didn't move. He was ready to face it head-on. He could hear the hum of power surging in the walls, feel the change in the atmosphere. Everything was building toward this moment, the culmination of everything they had done. "Data extraction complete," Emma said, her voice sharp and crisp. "We've secured the quantum processors. The Silvath won't be able to track us." Vakir nodded, his grip tightening on his weapon. He didn't care if they tried to fight back. This was their victory. The air felt different now, charged with the reality of what they had accomplished. The fight wasn't over, but the tide had shifted. They had taken control. The team was in motion again, moving faster now, their steps purposeful and calculated. The second exit was only a few meters away, but they weren't out of danger yet. There was still the question of getting out of the station and making sure the data was safe. But they were prepared. They had come too far to falter now. "Get to the ship," Vakir ordered, his voice firm, his eyes scanning every inch of the hallway. "We're not stopping until we're clear." The team moved with the same precision they had maintained throughout the operation. There was no second guessing now, no room for error. They were on the brink of achieving something humanity had never imagined, a direct strike against an advanced alien race, and they had won. The doors to the exit slid open, and the first light of the outside world filtered into the hallway. It was the first real sign of freedom in what felt like days, but it wasn't just freedom they had fought for. It was a statement, a declaration that humanity was no longer the underdog, waiting for a chance to prove itself. They were the hunters now, and the galaxy had just learned that the cost of underestimating them would be more than anyone could afford. As they stepped into the cool, sterile air of the escape ship, the engines roaring to life behind them, Vakir couldn't help but smile. They had taken what was theirs, and now they would take their place among the stars. The Silvath had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity. The galaxy wasn't just theirs to protect. It was theirs to conquer. "Prepare for launch," Vakir said, his voice steady but filled with purpose. "We're going home." The ship's engines rumbled to life, and the vast unknown beyond the station awaited them. This wasn't just the end of a battle. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Humanity had struck its first blow. The Silvath would never forget the day they decided to mess with Earth.